Hello everyone, this is the Disney Dude here. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel for more content, and please hit that thumbs up if you like the video. Today I have done both new shows at Disney's Hollywood Studios. The new Little Mermaid, a musical adventure show, which replaced Voyage of the Little Mermaid, and I have done Disney Villains Unfairly Ever After, which replaced Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy. So, how were the shows? Well, let's find out in another of Michael's honest reviews. So, just a couple things before we get started here. Yes, I do call these honest reviews. I am not on the media list for Disney. I don't have anyone telling me what I should or shouldn't say. These are my very honest thoughts of what I think about an attraction, what I think about a show, what I think about a land, or anything. So that's why I call these honest reviews. Okay. So I want to start with the Little Mermaid show. So the Little Mermaid. Let's go back to Voyage of the Little Mermaid days. So Voyage of the Little Mermaid debuted at Disney's Hollywood Studios, or back then it was MGM Studios. It debuted all the way back in 1992. All right. And at that time, it was a very cutting-edge, high-tech show. I mean, you had lasers, and you had water falling on the audience, and you had, so many great things happening. And it was, it was very cutting-edge of its day. All right. And then, as things, go, the show was, after, it was, even before years before COVID hit, the show was, showing its age. It was definitely, you could definitely tell that Voyage had been around for a long time. A long time, okay? This show was, over 30 years old. I mean, 92, so that's, 2002, let's see, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2001, 2002, that's 10, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, that's 20, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, so 28, so, 2020 would have been 28 years. 28 years of Voyage of the Little Mermaid, alright? So it was a show that was around a long time, alright? And there were whispers way before the parks shut down for COVID. I mean, I even remember when we moved here in 2015, there were talks then about closing Voyage of the Little Mermaid. There were talks way before, 5 years even before COVID hit, that they were going to close Voyage of the Little Mermaid. It was an old show. It was looking, outdated, and they really weren't sure what they were going to do with the theater, but they even back then they wanted to get rid of it. Well, and then of course I don't have to tell you, 5 years later, in March, COVID-19 pandemic hit, shut everything down, so that really gave Disney their excuse to just say, all right, we are permanently closing Voyage of the Little Mermaid. We are officially done with it. So, now they didn't come out and tell us that. So when the parks reopened, even after the social distancing rules and everything, even after the stage show started coming back, Frozen, which was first, and then I think it was Beauty and the Beast after that, and then Mickey's Magical Friendship Fair, and then Indiana Jones, and Festival of the Lion King and Finding Nemo. After all these shows started reopening, we noticed that Voyage of the Little Mermaid wasn't reopening. It wasn't coming back. And we were all wondering, what's gonna happen to Voyage of the Little Mermaid, Disney never really did. I think they really kind of dropped the ball with that. If you were going to get rid of a show, you could have just come out and said that. You could have just come out and said, you know what, Voyage of the Little Mermaid, we're done with that show. We're retiring that show. They didn't do that. They just never reopened the theater. So, everyone was, we all knew it was gone, because it wasn't, it wasn't coming back, 2022, 2023, it wasn't coming back. So we all knew that it was, permanently closed, but Disney never came out and said that. Which I think that was a shame. And then, a lot of people have kind of wondered, why did they close Voyage of the Little Mermaid? Why did it, never come back and everything? The thing that I've heard repeated a number of times was, and at this point, I don't even know if it's true or not. I don't know. Again, Disney's not going to come out and say anything to us, but I had heard whispers that the theater and the whole theater and the pre-show area was covered with mold, was covered with black mold, which is very toxic, very dangerous. So, there was even talks about that way before they were going to close it. There were cast member leaked stories that, that the stage was covered in mushrooms anyway. And it was just not, it was, we as audience, we didn't really think about that because, it was not really anything. We didn't know that. How were we supposed to know that? So so we were kind of oblivious to the fact that, this theater was, not doing so great. And so I think that when COVID did hit, they finally decided to close the theater, and that was it. And then they had no plans to bring back a show in that space. And then we get a survey from Disney saying, what do you guys think of Voyage of the Little Mermaid? And now, again, remember that this show had been closed for a couple years at that point. I think maybe 22, 23-ish, maybe it was closed by that point. So we all got the survey, and they asked us what we thought of Voyage of the Little Mermaid, and a lot of people were like, myself included, were like, that was a good show. But it needed or needs to be updated. It needs to be, brought up to current standards. It needs to have more cutting edge technology. It needs to have, the whole thing needs to be updated. It just needs to be updated because they're all of, I loved Voyage of the Little Mermaid. I really, really did. I loved that show. But you watched it and you were very, it definitely was a 90s show. You could definitely tell it was a 90s show, okay? It was, and back then, like I said, back then it was, it used a lot of cutting edge technology of the time and everything. And unfortunately, Disney just didn't take care of that theater and just ran it into the ground. And when the Disney parks came out with the survey and said, what do you guys think of the show? People were like, well, we like the show. We like the show. It's okay. But if you're going to bring it back, it needs to be updated. It needs to be updated. It needs to be, the costumes need to be refreshed. The puppets need to, the puppets need to look better. And, the animatronic of Ursula needs to be, updated. Everything just needs to be updated. Okay? And I'm really glad that they listened. I'm really glad that they listened and they took the time to update this show. Now, whether or not the theater was covered in mold and everything, I don't know that. Okay, I don't know. Disney's never going to come out and say that, even if it was covered in mold. We don't know that. Okay, we're never going to know that because Disney doesn't want that, obviously, to come out. Okay, so it's but I am glad that they listened and they updated the show. They updated the show. Everything in this show looks fresh and clean and updated, and everything just looks so much better. So much better than what Voyage of the Little Mermaid used to look like. And I'm really glad. I'm really happy for that fact, okay? When this show was permanently closed, everyone was like, oh, you need to, you need to put a Moana show in there, or you need to put a Encanto show in there, or you need to put, something else in that theater. And it's like, I was one of those people that was like, we don't really need to have the new Disney in our face all the time, okay? Because people tend to forget that The Little Mermaid was a huge hit. It was a huge movie, okay? This movie really kind of rejuvenated the studio, okay? It brought back feature animation. It brought back, the classic musical. It brought back so much things that, you remembered from your childhood from watching Walt Disney's movies that, people, it was a gigantic hit, okay? It was a gigantic hit, all right? People, because it was so long ago, people tend to forget that now. People tend to forget that, The Little Mermaid was a huge hit. It was like the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs of its day, all right? So, I was really kind of in the minority of, we don't need to have, these new Disney movies take over classic Disney spaces. We just don't, okay? As much as I, like Coco, Encanto, take it or leave it, but, as much as I like Coco, or, as much as, some people, really like Encanto, that doesn't really, that's, those movies didn't resonate with people as much as, The Little Mermaid did. All right? Because again, a lot of people tend to forget that The Little Mermaid was a huge hit, and it really brought back Disney feature animation, and it brought back, it just rejuvenated the studio. So, I truly think that The Little Mermaid needs to be represented. It really does need to be represented, which I was very happy that, we got The Little Mermaid, what's it called? This ride has so many different names. The Little Mermaid, under the Journey Under the Sea, Journey Under the Sea, The Little Mermaid, or something. I can't remember what the name of our attraction is here in Florida, but it's but I'm glad that we do have that that attraction, and I truly think that we need to have a Little Mermaid stage show. Okay, whether that was like Voyage of the Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid: A Musical Adventure is a continuous running show. It's 19 minutes. It runs every, however long between shows. It's still a continuous running show. But the Little Mermaid has to exist. It has to exist in that form. Okay? And I'm really happy. I'm really glad that Florida has two Little Mermaid things to do at the parks. Okay? Magic Kingdom, you have the Little Mermaid ride, and at Disney's Hollywood Studios, you have, this brand new show, The Little Mermaid: A Musical Adventure. So I'm really, really glad that they kept The Little Mermaid in that space. Okay? I just don't, I never agreed with people when they said that, The Little Mermaid needs to go, it's not relevant anymore, and it's absolutely relevant. It is absolutely relevant, okay? It's my generation's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, okay? Each generation has their own Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, whether that be my generation, which is The Little Mermaid, or whether it be the younger generation, which is Frozen, okay? It deserves to be represented at the parks. It really does, okay? So I've kind of talked about the kind of the background of this show. So now I want to talk about the actual show itself. So the queue is pretty much the same. They still have the animation stills that was left over from Voyage of the Little Mermaid. When you get into that pre-show room, the holding room, if you remember from Voyage of the Little Mermaid days, there used to be all kinds of props in that room, like tridents and globes and all nets and all kinds of stuff hanging from that, all kinds of stuff in that room. Now there's nothing. There's nothing in that room. All right, which I think is they ripped out all of the theming in that room. So now it's just a great big empty room. And it's like, okay, when I walked in there, I was like, oh no. What just happened? I was like, oh no, this is not good. They took out all the theming of this pre-show. So I thought, oh no, what am I gonna see now? It's, so it's, and then we go into the theater, and the stage. I don't know. I told my mom this when I came home. I was like, I don't know because obviously the show hadn't been around for 5 years, but I said, I don't know if I'm not remembering right or what, but it seems to me like this stage is much more lower to the ground. It seems like it's much more at, eye level than Voyage of the Little Mermaid was. It seemed to me like Voyage of the Little Mermaid was kind of more up, kind of more elevated. So if you were sitting in like the first couple rows, you couldn't see what was going on, at the back of the stage. So this, so I don't know if they did that or not. If they did, I kudos to them, because I sat in, I think it was the second row from the, I think I sat in the second row from the front. So and I could see everything. I could see absolutely everything on that stage. So if they did do that, then kudos to them. Kudos to them for doing that, because at no point do you not see, what's going on stage. Okay. So I could see everything. I could see everything that was happening on that stage at all times. So I don't know if they changed that or not, but if they did, kudos to them. Kudos to them, because that really made all the difference to me. That really made all the difference to me. Look, I'm only 5'1". Okay? I'm only 5 feet tall. Okay? I am very short compared to most people. Okay? So, when I go to these shows, I want to be as front as I can get. Okay? Because I want to, especially if it's a new show, I want to see everything. Okay? So, I really appreciated that fact that this show really kind of used the space more. Unless I'm remembering wrong, someone can correct me if you want to correct me, you can. But it just seems to me that I don't know if they lowered the stage or what, but it just seems like everything, I could see everything. I could see everything. And I couldn't see everything, when I watched the original Voyage of the Little Mermaid. So I don't know. But if anyone knows that, please let me know. Comment on this video, because I'm interested. I'm interested to know if they actually lowered the stage, or if I'm just a crazy person. Okay, so if anyone does know that, just let me know, because I'm interested. I'm interested to know that. Okay. So anyway, we go into the theater, and the show starts, and it's immediately. They're digital characters. They're digital characters. They're not live performers. They're computer generated characters on the stage. And I thought, oh no, please don't tell me that this is going to be, a screen based heavy show. And then so I was very nervous when it first started, and then Ariel comes out and starts singing Part of Your World, and I was like, oh, phew, okay, there's live performers now, so it's like heart attack is over. Okay, so I was like, oh, phew, okay, now I can relax. So, it's, and I really like the fact that they updated Ariel's costume as well. It's much more brighter, much more. Your eye is drawn to it. Most of this show is on blacklight, because of the puppets and stuff. They don't want you to see the performers, manipulating the puppets. But Ariel is, especially throughout this show, really, they have her on like a giant harness thing. You can't see it because, it's covered, but I could barely see it. I could barely make it out on the stage, but there's two black, what do you call those, like holders or something, poles, that I assume attach to the back of her costume, and so she seems to be floating throughout this whole show, and I'm like, that's great. That is great. It just makes her feel like she's swimming through the stage. Okay? So I really like that. In the old show, she's just on a rock pretty much the whole time. So I'm really glad that when they brought this show back, they updated this. So she's kind of floating around the stage now. And that's really great. That is great. I was like, that is an awesome, awesome way to bring that character to life. Now, I want to talk about the puppets. So, the puppets, they obviously, everything in this theater was updated. So, Ariel's costume and the puppets look amazing. The puppets look absolutely spectacular. They are obviously brand new, but they look great. I really hope that they take care of these puppets because the colors are so bright, and they just look different. They look different than what they did in Voyage. Okay, Sebastian has more of that kind of over exaggerated lip that he has in the movie. In the original Voyage show, he didn't really have that. So they updated him to have that. So all the puppets look amazing. All the puppets look absolutely spectacular. And Ursula, which is whether you want to call her an audio animatronic or a puppet or what, I don't know, but she even looks great. The old show really kind of had Ursula really, chunky. They really had her, pretty heavy. And in this show, they've updated her, so it obviously she still looks like Ursula, but she's a little bit more the middle of the puppet, or whatever you want to call her, is a little bit more slimmer. So she just looks like a whole different character, which is great. They have two new songs. The song that opens the show is The Daughters of Triton, and then they have a musical number based around Kiss the Girl. So I was very happy that they included those as well. Because even though the show is condensed, okay, even though the show is condensed and everything, it feels more complete. It feels more complete than Voyage of the Little Mermaid did, if that makes sense to you, okay? Even though you understand the story in Voyage of the Little Mermaid, it seems like this, it made the story much more complete. It made it more full and kind of more complete, if that makes sense to you, okay? So, um, so, now, I want to talk about some of the characters. Some of the characters are digital characters. King Triton is a digital character, which I think is, they could have used a live performer, but I like the King Triton digital character. So, like I said, the Daughters of Triton, those are digital characters. Ursula is some digital, some puppet. It's very hard to tell. That's what made me happy. Was it was very hard to tell where the puppet left off, and then the screen took over. It was very hard to tell that. And that I appreciated. Another thing is, they said that, we were going to get a new battle sequence with between Prince Eric and Ursula. I don't know if I would call it a new climactic battle. You don't, I mean, she obviously still grows huge and everything, but you don't see Prince Eric driving the ship and, stabbing Ursula with the whatever that thing is. So you don't see that. She's at that point in the show, she is on screen, and she's not faced towards us. She's faced the other way. So her back is to us. And then all of a sudden you hear this big noise, and that signals that Ursula was stabbed and everything. I would have really liked it if it was in front of us. You're sitting there and you're like, did Ursula just die? Okay, did Ursula just get defeated? I don't know. Okay, so that would have been my one nitpick about this is, because when they said on screen, I assumed that we would see it. We would see him, fighting the giant Ursula and everything, and him stabbing her and everything, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in front of us. I mean, we see it happen, but you don't see Prince Eric driving the ship and stabbing Ursula. It's just kind of like, you hear the noise, and then she's like, oh, like that. But if you didn't know that, you'd be like, what just happened? Okay, so if we're nitpicking, that would have been my one big change. Is I would have liked to have seen the more onstage battle at the end, which is what I assumed. When they were going to bring this show back, I assumed that that's what we were going to have, was a big giant climactic ending. So I mean but it's not great. It's not great. She just flashes right on the screen, and then she gets stabbed, and then she just fades out, and it's like, that's not great. That's not great. Okay, so if we're nitpicking, that's what I would have done differently. I would have done a more in-depth battle. But I mean, it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. But that's the one concession that I would have done different. But overall, this show is great. It really brings back to life Animation Courtyard, which has been dead for so many years now. Animation Courtyard has been dead for 5 years, so I'm glad that this show really kind of brings the that area back to life. If you loved Voyage of the Little Mermaid, you're gonna love The Little Mermaid: A Musical Adventure. Everything has just been so enhanced, and everything has been updated, and it feels like the show you've seen before, but in a totally different way. And if you've never seen Voyage of the Little Mermaid, then you're gonna see a brand new Little Mermaid show. Okay, so that's what I say. To us that grew up with Voyage of the Little Mermaid, it's that and more, because they updated everything in the show. And if you've never seen Voyage of the Little Mermaid, then you're going to go in and you're going to see a fantastic new show. So again, I'm really glad that Disney listened to everybody and decided to update the show. One last thing that I want to mention, though, is the queue. Disney came out and said that this show was going to be included in Lightning Lane, okay, when it first opened. So when I bought Lightning Lane 3 days ago, I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick the showtime for the Little Mermaid show. It wasn't on there. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why is that not on there? Well, Disney decided to change their minds and just have a standby line. And let me tell you something. That line was really long. It was not anywhere near the line throughout the whole day was like 65 minutes was the standby wait. No, you're not going to wait that long. You're not going to wait that long, okay? I think I waited like, I don't know, 30, 40 something minutes, I think. But it was outside. They had some umbrellas, but it was, most of it was outside. And then you get in, obviously into the old queue. So then you're underneath everything. But if they're not going to do a Lightning Lane for this show, and they're still going to have that standby line, then they need to do something with that outside queue, because that was bad show. I was standing behind another group of vloggers, and we were all talking, and we all agreed that was bad show. You should not have your guests waiting out in 100-degree heat. Okay? So that was bad. And shame on them. Shame on them for doing that. Fortunately, we weren't, out there too long. But I think that Disney should have thought of that differently. They should have released the Lightning Lane. It definitely would have helped with that standby line. It wouldn't have been, you're not going to wait 65 minutes, okay? There was a couple points today when it was up to 80 minutes. But I don't really think you're going to wait that long. You're not going to wait that long, okay? Because that theater holds quite a good number of people, and that pre-show area holds quite a lot of people too, okay? So I don't think you're going to wait, 60 to 80 minutes for that show. But if the show does not appear on Lightning Lane for a while, then Disney needs to do something with that little outdoor queue, because that was bad. That was bad show. You should not have your guests waiting in, 80, in 90-degree heat, where the heat index is over 100, and you have people dying, literally, figurative, speaking that, you should not have your guests waiting outside. You just shouldn't, okay? Because that's bad. That's bad show. That is really bad show. So that's another one of my complaints is, if you're not going to have a lightning lane for this show, then I have a virtual queue. I really don't care, okay? As much as I really hate the virtual queue system, have a virtual queue. Have a virtual queue so you don't have your guests waiting in, 100-degree temperatures. Because that's not good. That is not good. All right? So Disney, if you're listening, you need to do something. And I really hope that in the coming weeks, I hope that they put this show on Lightning Lane so that it'll ease that standby line a little bit. But I think that was my biggest complaint. That was my biggest complaint, is that, you're going to have your guests wait out in 100-degree heat. No, I'm sorry. That is outrageous. That is ridiculous. You should have thought of that. You should have put more thought into that. That was, you're going to open a brand new show, and it's going to be crowded. And you're like, we don't need anything outside. It's okay. It's fine. They can just deal with it. I'm sorry. That is outrageous. And you need to fix that. And I really hope they do. If they're not going to put the show on Lightning Lane. But again, to summarize with this part of the honest review, should definitely go see The Little Mermaid, A Musical Adventure. It's everything that you remember and more. It's everything that you remember that Voyage of the Little Mermaid was and more. It's a great show. You're going to have a great time, and you're really going to enjoy it. So if I had to rank this show, I would rank the show. I would say probably 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. It's a great show. Fantastic. So, could have been a little bit better, but overall, fantastic. Fantastic. Or as they say, fantastic. Alright. So, now let's move over to Sunset Showcase, where the Disney Villains have taken over. So approaching the theater is, again, they have, everything was open, and there were hardly any umbrellas out there. Okay, guys, are you kidding me? This is one of the hottest states in America. All right. So I just don't understand why management is like, we don't need to build more shade. It's fine. It's okay. They're gonna deal with it. Okay. So that's bad. That is bad. That's bad show. That is really bad show. Okay. But then, so the outside is basically the same as when it was Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy. There's obviously it's different because they took out the cars and everything, and now it's just a big empty courtyard, which I really hope that they fix, because that courtyard is empty. Okay, at least with Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy, you had a couple of, I know they were like, static cars, statues and everything, but at least it was there. It filled out the space. Okay, it was not filled out with this show. Okay, it's just a big, the whole queue is empty space. Okay, there's nothing in there There's nothing about it that tells you this is a Disney villain show. So I really hope that they fix that. They, maybe put like, figures of, Cruella de Vil or Captain Hook and Maleficent out there, for photo ops or something. But I mean, it's just an empty courtyard, and you could have, you should have done more with that area. All right. Now, going into the theater, they obviously redid this whole theater because, there's a big stage now where, the big screen of of Lightning McQueen was, and of course where the audio animatronic was and everything. So it seems a little bit more smaller because it's the Lightning McQueen was kind of, it was pushed back. And there were seats kind of a little bit close, but it was, not really close. So this time they put chair, they put the rows and the seats, like right by the stage. So it feels a little bit more condensed in that way. So if you walk into that room and you're like, wow, this is really small. It feels really small. That's why, because they removed all the benches and they put in, all these rows of seats and everything and this big stage. So, if you walk in and you're like, wow, this seems really small, it is, because it is. All right. Now, I want to talk about the villains. They symbolically break through the glass. You have Cruella de Vil comes out first and does her number, which is fantastic. I really love that number. Her song plays, Cruella de Vil plays, and she does all these wardrobe changes and just great big, sweeping movements. But how the actress that really portrayed Cruella de Vil got her down pat. So, it's just, it's wonderful. The costume changes and everything. And, the Captain Hook segment was great. He breaks through the mirror and does his song, which is the world's most famous crook, which is his song from Peter Pan. And then Maleficent breaks through the glass, and it was very odd. I think that her song was a very odd choice. They decided to do Once Upon a Dream. All right, but it's a spooky kind of version of Once Upon a Dream. I don't know if I really like that. I'm gonna have to see the show again. But I don't know. I don't know. That kind of brought me back to the Maleficent movie with Angelina Jolie. So I didn't like that. I really didn't care for it. Could have done something different with that, but I mean, unfortunately, Maleficent is, one of those rare Disney villains that doesn't have a song. Okay? Captain Hook, Cruella de Vil, they both have songs. Okay? Maleficent doesn't have a song. So I understand you had to do something, but I don't know. I think you could have maybe written another song, maybe written a brand new song for her, because Once Upon a Dream, it doesn't work. I don't know. I think it just falls flat. All right. So and then at the end, all the villains come up on screens, and then the magic mirror appears and says that these three villains pass through the glass: Cruella de Vil, Captain Hook, and Maleficent. So you need to choose from them. Choose from them. Who do you think is the most who has been the most villainized of the three? Okay, and what's really nice is that the ending changes. The ending changes. So one time you could see it and Maleficent wins, which is what I saw today. Or you could see it again and Cruella de Vil wins. Or you could see it again and see Captain Hook win. Okay, so that's nice. That's really nice that they change around the who wins and everything. I want to talk about staging. So this, obviously, everything feels a little bit more smaller, but this show really feels like a COVID show to me. It really feels like, only one character is on stage at a time, and then they all come out at the end, and they all seem, I don't know, but from where I was sitting, it seemed like that they were like 6 feet apart. It just didn't seem right. It just didn't feel, filled out enough. You only have 3 villains, and I don't know. I mean, I think you could have done better with that. You could have. I would have liked more performers. I would have liked more performers on the stage. You only have 3 people on that stage, one at a time. It just falls flat. It just feels very flat. Okay. So, that I think that they could have done a little bit better job with that. I sat there and I'm like, it feels like they staged this show during the pandemic. It feels like, the characters are 6 feet apart. It feels like, there's only one character on the stage at a time. It's not filled. The stage is not filled out. Okay. So I was like, that's not great. Okay. And, now the song, I want to talk about the song. The song is fantastic. It is a really great song. What you see is what you get. It's a great song. Everyone walking out of that theater was singing that song. It's a fantastic song. They really nailed it. They nailed that song. Okay. So, they have a great song. It just feels like it could have been more. It could have been more though. Okay. I think they were kind of afraid to, experiment with this show because they had the Little Mermaid and they were like, that's where we're going to spend the money. That's where we're going to spend the money to have everything updated, all the performers and everything. And we're just going to play it safe with this Disney villain show. Okay. Now look, I'll do the villain show every time that I'm at Hollywood Studios. Okay. It's not the worst show I've ever seen. It's not, okay? But it could have been more. It could have been more. It's a 17-minute show, which is funny, which is kind of funny because when Disney first came out with this show, they said that this show was going to have a runtime of 40 minutes. And I was like, wow, that's going to be a very interesting show. That's going to be a very interesting show. I really would like to see what they would do with that time and everything. And then they, you know, they took that back and they were like, oh, sorry, that's a typo. We didn't mean to release that information to you. So we didn't know how long the show was going to be. We had no idea. And so it's a 17-minute show. Okay? So it's 2 minutes shorter than The Little Mermaid: A Musical Adventure, but it's something else to do in this park. It's something else to do in this park that only has 9 rides, okay? And they needed that capacity, which is great because they're getting rid of Muppet Vision 3D. So they were like, we got to get these shows ready. We got to get these shows off and going before Muppet Vision closes. So, which is what? 28, 29, 30, 31, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11 days. 11 days is when Muppet Vision 3D permanently closes. So, you know, they were like, we got to get these shows out. We got to get them going because we're going to be down a show. Okay? So, that was, you know, kudos to them for doing that. But I mean, you know, but you know, I you know, speaking with this villain show, I really walked in and I'm like, this is going to be a great show. This is going to be a really great show. The Disney villains are finally getting their turn in the limelight. And it's not really, I mean, it's okay. It is an okay show. It is an okay show. If, you know, and then, you know, and then you go over and you watch, you know, the new Little Mermaid show, and you're like, wow, that was a really great show. Okay, so Little Mermaid is up here, the Villains is kind of like down here. Okay, so it's, you know, the Disney villain show could have been more. It wasn't, which is sad, but it's still a good show. It's still a good show. It's not the worst show I've ever seen, you know, but it's something else to do in this park that, you know, was not built for rides. It only has, you know, 9 rides in this park. So, you know, you need to have more stuff to do in this park. Okay? So, I'm, you know, but I would, you know, I stamp my approval on both of these shows. I think they're great. I think that The Little Mermaid is great. Villains was good. It was good. It could have been better. Could have been more. But it was good. It was good. Okay? You know, you could have had more performers in Villains. You know, there's you know, toward the end they have Hades on screen, and then they have Jafar on another screen. And then they have the Evil Queen on another screen, and these are pre-recorded. These are they're live performers, but they're pre-recorded. It's like, why couldn't you just have them in the show? Why couldn't you just brought them into the show, okay, instead of just having them on screen, which is not great, okay, but I really think that, I mean, you know, The Little Mermaid is a great show. It's right up here, you know, because, you know, the rule with theme parks is you have to be as good or better than what you replace. All right. And I really think that The Little Mermaid: A Musical Adventure is as good as Voyage of the Little Mermaid was. Is it better than Voyage of the Little Mermaid? I mean, that's up to you. That is up to you. Okay. But this is going to hurt me to say, but I think Musical Adventure, I think it's better. I really think it's better than Voyage was. And I loved Voyage of the Little Mermaid, okay? Do not get me wrong. I loved Voyage of the Little Mermaid, but I think that The Little Mermaid: A Musical Adventure, I think it's better. I really think it's better than Voyage of the Little Mermaid was, okay? And the Disney villain show, which I was really looking forward to, was okay. It was okay. it it was not the best thing, but it wasn't the worst thing I'd ever seen. But I definitely think you should go see these two shows. I think you're gonna enjoy them. It's I stamp my approval. I stamp my approval on these two shows. So, and they're definitely going to help with capacity. They're definitely going to help with capacity. So, if you like this honest review, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to my channel for more content. Thank you guys for doing that. It really, I really do appreciate it. It really helps me out when you like the video, when you subscribe. It gives me hope that I'm not the only person that likes to talk about Disney and the Disney theme parks. Okay, so I thank you guys very much for watching this video. You guys have a great rest of your afternoon or evening or morning. You guys go see the shows. Go see those shows because they breathe, whether you like the shows or not, the new villain show or not, I think it breathes new life into Disney's Hollywood Studios, which needs it. And it's gonna need for a while. Okay? So, thank you guys very much for watching this video. You guys enjoy the rest of your morning, evening, afternoon, and just remember that tomorrow is just a dream away.